Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads for a very exciting book review. Today, we are going to be reviewing Trials of the Jedi. This is the final adult book in the High Republic. Such a long time coming. We've been covering this for 4 years. This was like the first thing that we ever covered on the channel. So, this is a big one for us as a channel as we've grown so much and changed so much over the last 4 years. And now we have this finale from Charles Soule, the man who kicked off the High Republic with Light of the Jedi. We're going to get into this book non-spoilers, so don't worry about hearing things if you're just somebody who's interested in checking it out. But we will be running a book club for this. So we do our Legends book clubs where we talk about different Legends releases live with you guys on stream. And we're going to be doing a live stream talking about this book in a few weeks. So keep an eye out on the channel for that announcement. Make sure you like the video if you haven't. Comment below. Let us know your thoughts on Trials of the Jedi if you've read it or if you're excited about it. Let us know what you thought of our review. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Even though the High Republic is ending, we'll still have reviews of every single Star Wars book as they come out. All right, let's get into the review. And as always, we start out talking about the writing and the plotting. And because we receive audiobooks as our review copies, we also talk about the audiobook production and the way that was crafted, the production value behind that. So I'm going to pass it over to you first, Sanak. What did you think of the way Charles Soule ended the High Republic Phase 3, both his writing and his plotting, as well as the way Mark Thompson narrated this audiobook?
Considering just how much he had to cover, I thought this was really fantastic because it's not just phase 3. This is the entire initiative. It's centered mainly on this Luminous Nine, but it was always kind of interesting why they went with this specific makeup of the team. And then you realize, well, you're trying to pull every single thread from every single medium. And that's something that we've talked about on this channel quite a bit, where yes, the High Republic as a whole has always had good to great stories, even these junior novels, even these younger kid comics and all that. But it doesn't necessarily always feel connected, doesn't necessarily always feel important. This is a great explanation because you're like, okay, why is like a character like a Tarek here? You understand obviously characters like Bell, Avar, Elzar, like yeah, they all make sense. They've been popping up here and there, but then why would you have a buckets of blood? You're just trying to give us a little bit more of a context and a connection to everything. Fantastic choice by Charles Soule. Obviously, this is a story that is centered around these nine, and he doesn't really let up. He puts you in their shoes very, very quickly. Obviously, you're dealing with everything on Planet X with the Nameless, with the Blight that has been a huge, huge focus, obviously, throughout Phase 3. But you also get a lot of the Battle of Ariadu. You've already been exploring this so much in Fear of the Jedi, and we've been exploring this in the High Republic Adventures comics. But that's always felt so separate. Here, Charles Soules is like, here's some characters that we've known. Here's our POVs here. Let's continue some Wave 2 threads that haven't really been addressed in a while. All the stuff that felt a little bit slower about Phase 3 is a little bit more concentrated in that battle itself. And it's super well done. And on top of all that, having Mark Thompson, again, at this point, just the GOAT when it comes to just audio dramas, comes to storytelling, the voices of characters and all that. He absolutely delivers on both fronts. And even if a lot of the stuff on Planet X feels very divorced from everything on the Battle of Ariadu, just the quality of like the sound effects, the quality of the interactions, the payoff so much between all these two major plot points is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you spend a lot of time on Planet X. You're not really hopping around like you do in other books. You're not really building up to it. You're there, and then everything just is turned up to 11. I mean, there's some very, very interesting threads that are left open too, especially. Obviously, there's some very strong resolutions. I think one of mine was definitely how Bell and his story kind of comes to a conclusion. There's some very interesting things about Planet X that we've been seeing through Elzar and Avar's, whole depictions there. Ty Yorick, she really comes to the front here and adds so much to like what Reeth and Aslan are doing in this story. Like this is, you can't really talk about the plot. You can only really talk about the characters here. And if you're reading this book, you're reading it because you want to see the conclusion of all their individual plot lines. And yeah, it's a fantastic book. I really want to say so much more about it. Charles Soule does a lot of interesting things with his plot here, and for the most part, he nails a lot of it. I think it is a bit sad that we do get some characters that feel like they're way more prominent in phase 1, kind of just left to the side. But with the sort of announcement of phase more, continuation of these High Republic stories, what he's been kind of given or tasked with closing out here, yeah, it does feel like he's taken almost everything that he worked on in Light of the Jedi, what Kevin Scott was working on, Justina Ireland, everybody's stories mashing up together. Yeah, it is truly like the full light of the Jedi in its darkest moment comes through. I almost wish there's another 100 pages. There was just that much to encompass, and maybe a little bit more connectivity between the two major plot lines would have helped, especially because, like I said, Wave 2 feels like it's getting its payoff in the battle, but it's almost like here's a chapter with that payoff. Here's a chapter where you finally understand the motivations of Marchion and stuff like that. Just feel like that could have been a bit more built out. It's a roller coaster, and I'd rather have the thrill of it than necessarily more plotting and depth and everything. That can always come around later. That can always be something I might reread and find a little bit more nuance in. Right now, it's a whirlwind, and I took it in, and I was like, yeah, incredible work what he pulled off here with the plot.
Yeah, and I think that's the only real criticism I have of the book is I wanted more. And for a book that's already 450 pages long, it's kind of hard to say that. But there are so many things left in the High Republic, and you just realize it over the course of this book, how many plot points are created but unresolved, and how many sets of characters have their moments throughout certain books, but then don't really come back in the whole. That there's still a few things even after it's over. You're like, wait, what happened to this person or what happened there? That's the nature of these types of initiatives. You can't necessarily please everything and everybody, but I thought Charles Soule did a fantastic job of focusing on the characters who were the centerpieces of the adult novel side, while also tying in enough of the ancillary characters, the characters from YA, the characters from comics, and giving everybody a little bit of a time to shine. There were representatives from every piece, like you were saying. Charles Soule did a great job of focusing the plot, especially in the second half. The first half of the book has a lot longer chapters. For the audiobook side, they're almost an hour each for the first 5, 6 chapters, and they jump around to different perspectives, all the different main characters. You have Marchion Ro chapters, you have Elzar and Avar chapters, you have Jedi Council chapters, you have Lina So chapters, and everything's kind of giving you just an overview of what's going to happen, but he throws you into the action very, very quickly. And again, this book absolutely makes Tears of the Nameless essential. Definitely, if you're somebody who's only reading adult novels, you might want to go back and read Tears of the Nameless. And once you get kind of through the middle act of the book, once it gets very, very much so focused on the Nine, that's when I thought this book really got going. It was really exciting. The way Charles Soule returned to writing Marchion was excellent, and the way you bring in the Nihil and the different factions of the Nihil, and you get a little bit more information on the Nameless and all these different types of things that are a part of this book. He handled the lore with the politics, with the Jedi stuff. All of it came full circle, and I thought he did a fantastic job wrapping this up. Definitely could have been longer. I think as the book wrapped up, there were certain moments from characters in the epilogue that really hit. There were others that were like, wait, I want to know what else that character is going to do. You also have some other characters and some other factions that, for me, Lina So, that I felt like were a little underserved in this story. She's been such a big part of these books, and not necessarily that I'd rather have politics than the lightsaber stuff, than the Jedi stuff, but she was a big character at the beginning of this book and kind of phases out once the mission of the Nine starts. There were certain things about the kind of more normal person side of Star Wars that aren't necessarily a part of this, but have been a big part of the High Republic. As for the audiobook, Mark Thompson, if not the best narrator, top 2 narrator in Star Wars with Jonathan Davis. He's always excellent, and he's excellent here again. His voices are excellent. I love everything about his narration, and of course, the sound effects and production value are incredibly high as always. So if you're interested in audiobooks, you get the full movie-like quality of reading this book. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Let's move on to the characters, because this is a story that's definitely plot-centric, but all of our big characters are here and they all have time to shine. Sanak, when you look at the main characters, the characters that really lead this story, which characters' stories were your favorite? Which ones did you think really stood out? And which ones do you think could have gotten maybe a little bit more time to shine?
I mean, I wanna say all of them need a little bit more time, but that's just because I didn't wanna, like, let them go, right? Like, we're seeing a lot of conclusions, right? Even if we do get additional material with these characters, it won't necessarily hit the same because everything is after all this massive conflict kinda coming to a head. I would say Buckets of Blood probably doesn't get the best due, and it makes sense. I mean, Torben is a character meant for kids who are reading comics, like very young kids. And here you're like, okay, how does he adapt to a very dark story in an adult medium? Quite well, actually. And he is very important for like setting up a lot of what's going on with the Luminous Nine. And there are some very interesting things that happen during the formation that is pretty surprising. And I just feel like maybe he was a little bit less concrete of a character, less realized of a character, especially with how he had to change mediums quite dramatically. I'm a huge fan of everything that happened with reading Aslan. There is some very interesting, dark, twisted things about Aslan, and the Avar Elzar finish is it's everything that Phase 3 has been working with them once they've really admitted their feelings, been connected. And Elzar has always kind of been that firebrand, and Avar's finally the Song of the Force really coming to full effect here. It's been so long. Like, yes, she's linking up with people, she's doing all those things. Well, we've already known that, but she's gone through such a tumultuous period before just finally kind of like submitting to her feelings for Elzar, having them kind of be paired together, how they're hand in hand for everything, and their final conclusion is just man, like it is a pure embodiment of everything the High Republic was there for. Bell and Buryaga, unfortunately, like that duo in these last few books aren't really as much of a duo. Buryaga definitely has kind of taken the backseat, and it makes sense. He is a Wookiee character. It's a little harder to write dialogue and all that for him, so he kind of becomes more of like the actiony sort of character. But Bell's ending was really good. I was actually quite pleased with what he was able to accomplish, and you very clearly see the thread that has been building up from Eye of Darkness come to a full head. There is obviously a very big character that's been around since Phase 1. I loved his conclusion. Marchion, I mean, I really did like his ending. I just wish it was spread out a lot more over Phase 3. That was something Phase 1 handled so much better. You can understand almost like the pulling back of his character because of like what his final ideology kind of comes off as. A choice. I don't know if it necessarily landed 100% for me, but at least we did get a lot more into his head, his inner monologue, what he's doing, the gambles that he's finally taking instead of just letting Gira and other people kind of handle Nihil business. Like you finally get like, okay, that's the Marchion Ro I do remember from Phase 1, even if he's way more unhinged, even though all these hallucinations and everything have been happening much longer. Getting that final ideology, what's driving him, being finally played out, some of the crazy, quite literally explosive things that he does in this story, you're just like, oh man, like, oh right, like this is the villain. And it's a fitting ideology for him by the end. It's just something I just wanted to be spread out in like Temptation of the Force and Eye of Darkness to have been seeded a little bit more clearly with at least a couple of chapters of him there. You can feel Soul kind of being strained to tell his story the best way possible. And obviously, he did introduce him in the first place. But it is a bit of a shame going from how detail Light of the Jedi was with everything with the Nihil, with everything around Marchion, and then how he gets elevated to recapping things, connecting the dots, getting into his headspace, giving him some great action sequences. But you're like, man, it's almost like you understand why he tells people you can read Light of the Jedi and then you can read Trials of the Jedi, and that should be good enough for you. But it's like, well, I'd love to see more from Marchion. It was just a shame that for such a great villain to start off with, he did lose a little bit of his luster, and you feel so much of this book as him trying to regain it. There just isn't enough time for that.
No, I definitely agree with that point. I think Marchion was relatively mishandled in the middle of this initiative. The Eye of Darkness is still a really great appearance for him, but he is floundering in that story. He's trying to figure out what's next for him after he's conquered the galaxy. But then he does kind of sit idle and doesn't really do much in the next half dozen things that came out of the High Republic. And then now we're here, and he not only changes a lot as a character, but he has these big epic moments, and you kind of just wish the whole initiative led up to that. Like, these are the moments that you would have gotten if this book was the thing that came right after The Fallen Star rather than 3 years after The Fallen Star came out. So I did want more, and I was disappointed overall with how they handled Marchion in this phase. I've said over and over again, not a huge fan of the blight just as a concept, just because it's just another like plague or disease. Now, as for this story, this was the first time I actually liked the Blight. I thought they did a great job of explaining the Blight, its origins, how it's connected to the rest of the story, and I really did dig it, and I dug the way they handle that issue. I just was never as attached to the Blight as a concept, or as afraid of the Blight as a concept as I was in Phase 1 with Marchion Ro. Marchion Ro was a truly different villain than we had really seen in Star Wars before, and I just thought he worked so much better as the centerpiece of the evil side of this High Republic world. Seeing him have a time to shine here was awesome, but it also makes you go, I just wish we got more of this the entire time. As for the rest of the crew, Avar and Elzar were the next big standouts to me. I love their story. I love the way their story ended, and I love the way they unfold into this big conflict, the way the things we learn about them and their relationship and the progression of them as a duo has evolved and changed throughout phase 1 to phase 3. It really brings back a lot of the stuff from even like Temptation of the Force, where you felt like it was a good character book, but maybe not necessarily that important to the overall plot. A lot of the stuff about them as a duo does really come back here. And I thought that was a great way to not just end their story in the High Republic, but also to tie in the fact that they have this relationship that you don't really ever see in Star Wars between Jedi, and the way that relationship is carried into the future, as we move on from generations. It's a nice way to wrap up their story and to wrap that part up. Bell and Buryaga, I did think were really good as well. Burry's just kind of the heart of these books, and so he has a lot of good moments like that, but Bell really has a couple times to shine and has a lot less plot than he has had in the past, but he has big moments. And so if you're a Bell fan, you'll be pretty excited for some of the moments he gets throughout the story. And then the other big standouts to me were Aslan, Reef, and Ty, all three completely different perspectives on the Force and the Jedi. And so Aslan, he's been written so well in the last 3 things he's been in between the 2 YA books and this. I just thought they handled him and his ending fantastically as well. And Reef has a lot more great moments here. And then Ty has a lot of really cool moments as well for her character. So there are certain characters like a Vernestra Ro who you go, okay, where is her story, because she's such a big part of what they do in the future with the Acolyte, and then also has been a big part of even the adult novels with Temptation of the Force. She was one of the main characters, so she's kind of sidelined. There are certain sets of characters who are sidelined that you just want to be a part of this big epic finale, and they aren't, and that's disappointing. And even if their stories sprinkled throughout the rest of the initiative, it's still disappointing they aren't in the big finale of this whole thing. Everything that's here is great. It's just there's so many things in the High Republic that it is hard to wrap it up with one 450-page book. Could it have been longer? Yes. Is this book incredibly well paced? Yes. So it's like, it's kind of a catch-22. You kind of would have to sacrifice pace for more plot, more characters, or you sacrifice and focus on this set of characters. And I think they made a decision that created a pretty satisfying book, but still left enough on the table for you to do more in the future. The other one I want to give a shout out to is just the Nameless, because the Nameless have been these scary monsters out the entire thing, and now going back to their planet, we get our first real look at the planet and the Nameless themselves. And I thought that was a really nice touch and something that brings about, obviously, this incredible threat to the Jedi that you're like, where are they in the rest of the stories of Star Wars? That's handled here, and I thought that was done very, very well as well. So let's wrap up our review here and give it a score out of 5. Sanak, how would you rate Trials of the Jedi?
It's a very fitting conclusion to this massive amount of storytelling that we've had in over 4 years. Like it's flown by. It really has. And even if we've complained about pacing, structure, some issues between jumping between medium to mediums and, the weight of certain stories, it's never really been disappointing for me. It's always been like, yeah, that was pretty good. It was a great conclusion. It really reiterates the light of the Jedi, how the Jedi of this era truly are in their prime, even in these darkest moments, even though this conflict has been so hyper focused on a weakness of theirs, on their connection to the Force, their role in the galaxy. There's just still so much left on the table to be explained about their transition, about why they become so much more dogmatic and rigid and everything. And the Luminous Nine, they were a great group to follow. This is the first time you're putting them all together, but because Charles Soule was tasked with ending the initiative and taking in all these threads, it worked really well for me. So for that, it's not one of my favorite books, but it's very close up there in this initiative. So I think it'll improve over time, but for now, I'm going to give it a 4.25 out of 5.
Yeah, I loved this book. I thought it was really, really well done. It wrapped everything up extremely well. What it's decided to focus on, it did a great job focusing on. There's still plenty of things left on the table that I was hoping for a little bit more on. It can be a little sparse in the character department because it's covering so many characters, but the plot here, we asked for plot-driven books, more from Star Wars canon. The plot here is fantastic. And so I thought Charles Soule did a great job of writing this book and keeping it moving while never making it feel like it's redundant or tired. This book always felt fresh, and it had new ideas and new ways of wrapping the story up, and I thought they did a great job. I would give this a 4 out of 5. Like Sanak said, it could absolutely improve for me over time. It's still a great score, but it's certainly a book that I need to sit with for a little bit. But this was a fitting conclusion, and one that I thought was absolutely worth your time. Very, very exciting and lots of fun to read what happens to these characters. So let us know what you guys thought in the comments. Is this one of your favorite Star Wars books now? What's your favorite High Republic book as a whole? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like the video if you haven't. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews just like this. Like I said, we'll be covering every Star Wars book as they come out. Keep it locked on Star Wars, lads. We'll also have a lot more High Republic content coming out, including updated guides as well as tier list rankings and all sorts of High Republic wrap up, including our live stream covering Trials of the Jedi. So if you're interested in all that, make sure you're subscribed. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we will see you all next time.